The siren does not warn me. It just starts, and my coffee jumps out of the cup, and Leo is already halfway out of his chair before the second note even hits. "Talk to me," I say, sliding into my seat, headset already on, fingers already moving across the board like they know something I don't. "Signal," Leo says. "Strong one, not ours." I have spent 6 years underground listening to nothing but static and our own breathing, so when something other than static fills my ear, my whole body goes still in a way that has nothing to do with calm. Priya leans over my shoulder, close enough that I smell the burnt coffee on her breath. "Source?" "Orbit," I say. "High orbit. Coming down clean, no scatter. They're not hiding it." The voice comes through a second later, and it is not a voice at all, not really. It's a tone stacked on a tone, cold and even, the kind of sound a machine makes when it has already decided the conversation is over before it begins. Our translation engine chews on it for 3 long seconds before it spits out words on my screen, white letters on black. "Survey complete. Designation, Sol 3. Status, extinct. Population, 0. Recommend resource reclamation begin." I read it twice, then a third time, because the first 2 times my brain refused to hold on to it. "That's us," Leo says, like saying it out loud will make it less true or more true. He doesn't seem to know which. "That's Earth. They're talking about Earth." "I know what it is," I say, and my voice comes out flatter than I mean it to. Priya doesn't say anything. She has a way of going quiet that is louder than most people's shouting. She straightens up, walks 2 steps to the comm panel, and keys it without asking either of us if we agree with what she's about to do. "All stations, this is command deck. We have an incoming broadcast. Hold position. Hold silence. I want eyes on every channel." Her voice doesn't shake. Mine would have. I file that away, the same place I file everything I don't have time to feel yet. I have been listening to the sky since before the quiet, back when listening meant counting satellites and tracking weather fronts and nothing else. I am good at it. I am good at sitting in the dark with a headset on, waiting for a signal that might mean something. I was not prepared for the signal to mean this. "They think we're gone," Leo says. He's young enough that his voice still cracks a little when something rattles him, and right now something has rattled him all the way down. "They think we're actually gone." "They don't think it," I say. "They're telling each other it. There's a difference." I pull the signal apart the way I've been trained to, looking for the shape underneath the words, the metadata that says where a transmission starts and where it's headed. It isn't a private message. It isn't meant for one ship or one ear. It's a broadcast, wide, open, built to travel. "Priya," my own voice sounds strange to me now, thin around the edges. "This isn't a report. This is a notice." She comes back to my station fast enough that her chair rolls over and bangs the wall behind her. "Notice to who?" "Everyone listening," I say. Every thresher hull with an ear pointed this way. They're telling their whole fleet network that Sol 3 is done, that whatever's left down here is just rubble and minerals, free for the taking. The room goes very still, the kind of still you only get when 12 people stop breathing at the same time. 6 years ago, the surface of this planet was alive. There were cities. There were people who complained about traffic, and people who fell in love on park benches, and people who hated their jobs and went to them anyway because that was what living looked like. Then the sky opened up, and for 9 days the threshers rained fire down on every coastline, every capital, every place that showed a heat signature bigger than a candle. We call it the quiet now, because that's what was left after. Quiet streets, quiet houses, quiet everywhere. Except down here, in the tunnels and bunkers and old transit lines we turned into something like a life. We never fought back. We couldn't. We hid, and we counted our dead, and we hid better. And it worked. It worked so well that the people who tried to wipe us out are now standing in orbit, telling their own kind that the job is finished, that there's nothing left to worry about, that we are a line item closed. "They're wrong," Leo says, and there's something in his voice now that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. Not fear, something with teeth in it. I don't answer him. I'm too busy listening to the signal repeat itself, once, twice, a third time, steady as a heartbeat, going out to every dark corner of the system where a thresher ship might be listening. Status, extinct. I think about my brother, Matteo, who didn't make it underground in time during the 9th day. I think about the way his name sits in our memorial list, just one name among 40,000 others from this sector alone. I think about how the people in orbit right now have no idea that 40,000 names became 60,000, became 80,000, became a number too big to read out loud at any one sitting, and that every single one of those names belonged to someone who is still down here, in the dark, breathing. Status, extinct. They didn't count us. They counted the bodies on the surface and called it a census. Command, this is Hollow Spire Deep Relay. A new voice crackles through, rougher, older. Director Okoye, calling in from 3 levels below us, from the room most of us aren't cleared to enter. I assume you're hearing what we're hearing. We are, Priya says. Then you understand what happens next if we do nothing. Nobody answers her, because everybody understands it at the same time, in the same cold drop of the stomach. If the Threshers believe the job is finished, the next ships that come down won't be warships. They'll be reclamation crews, miners, scavengers. They will land on a planet they think is empty, and they will start taking it apart, piece by piece, tunnel by tunnel, until they find us anyway. Except this time we won't be hiding from soldiers looking for survivors. We'll be in the way of people looking for raw material. Options, Priya says, and I can hear how much that single word costs her. There's a pause on the line long enough that I can hear my own pulse in my ears. There's one, Okoye says finally. You all know there's one. We've never had the order to use it. We have it now. I look at Leo. Leo looks at me. Neither of us says the word out loud, because some words feel like they cost something just to speak, and this one has been sitting in the deepest part of this base since before either of us got here, wrapped in protocols and locked doors and a name that sounds almost gentle for what it actually is. The Lazarus Array. They think we're dead, Okoye says, and for the first time since I've known her, her voice has something raw running underneath the steel. Let's show them what dead people can do. The alarm Leo and I heard at the start of this is still going somewhere in the back of the base, a low pulse under everything, the sound of a whole hidden world waking up at once. Doors that haven't opened in years are opening. Lights that were kept dim to save power are coming up bright. Down every corridor I can't see from here, people are standing up from tables, putting down meals, picking up tools they were told they would probably never need. I sit at my station with the broadcast still looping in my ear, that same flat voice telling the universe that we don't exist anymore, and underneath my own ribs something old and quiet wakes up too. It isn't fear. I know fear. I've lived inside fear for 6 years, the slow kind, the kind that lives in your shoulders and never fully leaves. This is different. This is heavier, and steadier, and it doesn't ask my permission before it settles in. Reyna. Priya's hand lands on my shoulder, light, grounding. You good? I'm fine, I say, which is the kind of true that isn't really an answer. She doesn't push it. She just nods once, the way people do when they've decided to trust you with something, even though they know you're not telling them everything. Then let's get to work, she says. We've got a planet to unbury. The signal keeps repeating in my headset, patient, certain, wrong. Status, extinct. Not yet, I think. Not even close. I should be afraid. Some part of me knows I should be afraid, the way you know a stove is hot without needing to touch it. But all I can feel right now, sitting in this small bright room with the whole base waking up around me, is a kind of stillness I haven't felt since before the quiet. The stillness of a decision already made, the stillness of waiting to find out exactly how loud quiet people can be. Somewhere 3 levels down, a door that has never opened in my lifetime is about to open for the first time. I don't know yet what's behind it. I only know that whatever it is, it's been waiting down there as long as I've been waiting up here, and tonight, both of us stop waiting. Leo is already pulling up secondary feeds, scanning every frequency we have for follow-up chatter. Anything that might tell us how many ships are actually up there listening to that broadcast. His hands move fast, faster than his voice, like his fingers got the message before his brain finished catching up. 3 confirmed hulls in high orbit, he says. Maybe more we can't see yet. Could be scouts. Could be the start of something bigger. Define bigger, Priya says. I don't know yet. That's the problem with not knowing. I almost laugh at that, not because it's funny, but because it's the truest thing anyone has said since the siren went off. Down here, not knowing has always been the real enemy. We learned to live without sunlight. We learned to live without fresh air that didn't taste like recycled metal. We never learned to live without information, because information was the only weapon we had. Until now. The broadcast loops again in my ear, the same flat tone, the same 2 words sitting at the center of it like a stone dropped in still water. Status, extinct. I mute it for a second, just to hear my own thoughts without that voice crawling through them. And in that small silence I become aware of how loud my own heartbeat actually is. Reyna, Priya's voice again, quieter this time, just for me. When you're ready, Okoye wants you down there. Not the whole team. You. Me specifically? You specifically. She didn't explain why. She never does. I look at Leo, who shrugs in a way that says he's just as confused as I am, and then back at Priya, who is already turning toward the corridor that leads to the lower levels, the one most of us have walked past 100 times without ever being cleared to take. My legs decide to follow her before the rest of me catches up to the decision. Behind us, the broadcast keeps repeating into the dark, patient as a held breath, telling the universe a lie that we are about to spend everything we have left proving wrong. The lower levels smell different from the rest of the base, older metal, Older air, like walking into a memory that nobody bothered to update. Director Okoye is waiting for me at the bottom of the last staircase, arms crossed, a tablet glowing under one elbow. She is not a tall woman, but she has the kind of presence that makes rooms feel smaller around her. I have spoken to her maybe a dozen times in 6 years. Every single time, it has meant something was wrong. "Walk with me," she says, and doesn't wait to see if I will. I follow her down a corridor lined with doors that have no names on them, only numbers. And behind one number is a hum I can feel in my teeth before I can hear it with my ears. "You grew up near the old coastal relay tower," Okoye says, not looking at me. "Before the quiet." "I did. Your brother worked maintenance on it." My chest does something complicated at the mention of him, a tightening that I've gotten good at not showing on my face. "He did." "I'm sorry," she says, and she says it like she means it, which is rare enough that it catches me off guard. I read the casualty list more times than I should have. His name stuck with me. Mateo Ortiz, tower technician, day 9. I don't answer that. There isn't an answer that fits in a hallway, walking fast, with somewhere urgent to be. She stops in front of the door with the loudest hum behind it, and presses her palm to a reader I didn't know this base had. The door doesn't slide open so much as it exhales, a long release of pressure that's been building behind it for longer than I've been alive down here. What's on the other side is not a weapon. Not in the way I expected a weapon to look. It's a room the size of a stadium, sunk so deep into the rock that I can't see the ceiling, full of towers of dark metal wrapped in cable thick as my arm, every one of them lit from within by a slow pulse of blue light, like something breathing in its sleep. "This is the Lazarus Array," Okoye says. I don't say anything. I don't think there's a smart thing to say to a room like this. 12 years ago, before the quiet, we shot down a Thresher scout craft over open water, she says, walking along the edge of the towers, trailing one hand along the cable like it's something alive she's fond of. Nobody talks about that anymore, because nobody talks about anything from before, but it happened. We pulled the wreck up from the seabed in pieces. Most of it was useless to us, some of it wasn't. "You built this from their own technology." "We built this from the parts of their technology they never expected anyone primitive enough to understand," she says. "It took years. It took people who are not in this room anymore, because they didn't survive long enough to see it finished. We told no one outside this level that it existed, because a secret that everyone knows isn't a secret anymore, it's a liability. And now? Now the only thing keeping us alive is a lie the Threshers are telling each other," she says, finally turning to face me. "That lie has an expiration date. The moment a reclamation crew lands and starts digging, that date arrives early. We have one window to use this, and one window only, because the instant we fire it, every Thresher hull in range will know exactly where the shot came from." I look up at the towers again, at the slow blue pulse running through them like a heartbeat that's been waiting a very long time to matter. "What does it actually do?" "It reaches orbit," she says. "Hard. The Threshers call their strike doctrine resource reclamation, like the planet owes them something. We built this to answer that doctrine directly. Kinetic drivers, seeded through the debris field they left behind from their own bombardment 6 years ago. We turn their garbage into our answer. Every dead satellite, every burned-out hull fragment still drifting up there. We can wake it up and send it home. Planet killers, I say, and the words taste strange in my mouth, too big for a voice as tired as mine. Planet killers, she agrees, built by the people who tried to make one out of us. A comm panel set into the wall near the towers crackles to life before either of us can say more, and a chorus of voices spills out of it, overlapping, urgent, none of them waiting their turn. Okoye crosses to it fast, pressing a hand flat against the panel like she can hold the noise still through touch alone. "Council, one at a time," she says, and the voices don't quite obey, but they do quiet enough to separate into individual threads. "Director, this is Section 9, an older man's voice, rough at the edges, carrying the particular wariness of someone who has argued the same point more than once before. "We are hearing rumors that you intend to fire the array. Tell me those rumors are wrong." "They're not wrong, Anwar." A second voice cuts in before the first can respond. Younger, sharper. "Then you're about to undo 6 years of staying hidden in one afternoon. Do you understand what you're risking? We have children down here who have never seen a Thresher patrol up close, because we made sure of it. You fire that weapon, you paint a target on every level of this base. They already believe we're a target worth nothing at all," Okoye says, her voice even, though I can see the muscle in her jaw working. "That belief has an expiration date measured in hours, maybe less. The moment reclamation crews land and start digging, hiding stops being a strategy. It becomes a delay, a short one. So your answer is to hand them a reason to come looking sooner." "My answer is to make them afraid of what they'll find when they do." The line goes quiet for a moment, static hissing faintly under the silence, and I find myself holding still the way I do when I'm listening for a signal too faint to risk missing. There's no version of this where everyone agrees, Okoye says finally, quieter now. The kind of quiet that carries further than shouting ever could. I know that. I've known that since the day we finished building this thing, and locked the door on it instead of using it. But I am not willing to bury this base under rubble, because we were too afraid to throw the first punch in a fight that already started 6 years ago without asking our permission. Anwar's voice comes back, softer this time, some of the fight gone out of it, replaced by something closer to grief. And if you're wrong? Then I'll have been wrong trying to give us a chance, she says, instead of being wrong while we waited quietly to lose one anyway. Nobody on the comm has an answer for that. The line stays open a few seconds longer, filled with nothing but breathing from people scattered across a base none of them can see all at once, and then, one by one, the channel goes quiet, not in agreement exactly, but in the particular silence of people who have run out of better arguments and aren't ready to admit it out loud. Okoye lets her hand fall from the panel and turns back to me, the weight of that exchange sitting visibly on her shoulders even as her voice steadies itself back into something practical. They'll forgive me if it works, she says, half to herself. They'll never forgive me if it doesn't. Either way, the decision's already made. I made it the day we finished building that room and decided not to dismantle it. And behind us, the door we came through hisses open again, and a man I don't recognize at first steps in, breathing hard like he ran the whole way down. It takes me a second to place him. Caleb Whitfield, one of the maintenance techs who keeps the lower power grid running. A quiet presence I've passed in hallways without ever really seeing. Director, he says, and there's something off in the way he says it. A tightness that doesn't match the urgency of the moment. You called for the targeting crew. I did. You're on it. He nods, but his eyes go to the towers, to the blue light pulsing through them, and something crosses his face that isn't fear of the weapon. It's fear of something else, something I can't name yet. Gone again before I can be sure I saw it at all. I file it away, the same place I file everything I don't have time to feel yet. There's a problem, Okoye says, turning back to the wider room, and her voice changes into something more clipped, more practical, the voice of someone laying out a plan instead of a history. The array's primary uplink died 8 months ago, storm damage, never repaired, because repairing it meant sending someone to the surface, and we had no reason to risk that. We have a secondary, but it isn't strong enough on its own to punch a clean targeting signal through the debris field. We need the old coastal relay tower active again, manually. Someone has to go up and align it by hand. The room goes quiet in a way that has weight to it. The tower, I say. Your brother's tower, she says, and she doesn't soften it, doesn't pretend it's a coincidence she's choosing to ignore. You know that site better than anyone left alive. You used to visit him there. You know the access points, the dead zones, the places a person could move without being seen from orbit. You want me to go to the surface. I want to volunteer, she says. I won't order this. Nobody's ordering this. We don't have a clean way of doing it. Whoever climbs that ladder is doing it with eyes open, knowing the patrol drones haven't stopped flying just because the bombs stopped falling. Caleb is staring at the floor now, very interested in something that isn't there. I notice that too, file it away in the same growing pile. How long do we have, I ask, before the reclamation ships actually land? Unknown, Okoye says. Could be days, could be hours. The broadcast you intercepted went out less than 20 minutes ago. We have to assume someone is already moving on it. 20 minutes. The word extinct has been sitting in the universe for 20 minutes, and somewhere out past the edge of the sky, ships are already turning toward us because of it. I think about Mateo on the 9th day, climbing that same tower to keep a signal alive long enough for an evacuation order that never actually came, because by the time it would have come, there was no one left in command to send it. I think about how he died doing a job nobody asked him to finish, and how some part of me has spent 6 years being angry at him for it. And an even bigger part of me has spent 6 years wishing I'd been standing next to him when he made that choice. I'll go, I say, and the words come out steadier than I feel. Okoye studies me for a long moment, the kind of look that isn't checking my courage, it's checking my reasons. Whatever she sees, she accepts it without comment. Get her a route, she says to Caleb, who flinches like he'd forgotten anyone else was in the room. Old patrol patterns, surface maps, anything we still have on file from before. Yes, Director. His voice cracks slightly on the second word. Okoye turns back to me, and for just a second, the steel in her face slips enough to show the tired person underneath it. I'm not going to tell you this is safe. I'm not going to tell you we have a plan if it goes wrong, because we don't. What I can tell you is that if this works, every name on that broadcast's casualty count becomes a lie they told themselves into believing. That's worth something. I think it's worth a great deal. I think about Mateo's name, sitting on a memorial list 80,000 entries long, filed under a number nobody bothered to verify. It's worth it, I say. Above us, somewhere through layers of rock and steel and 6 years of silence, the broadcast is still looping into the dark, telling a universe full of strangers that we don't exist. I am about to climb toward the surface to prove, very personally and very loudly, exactly how wrong they are. Caleb hands me a folded paper map a few minutes later, his fingers trembling slightly as he does it, and tells me it's the best route he can build on short notice. I thank him. He doesn't quite meet my eyes when I do. I don't think much of it at the time. There isn't room left in me for anything except the climb ahead and the tower waiting at the top of it, and the brother who never came back down from one just like it. The siren upstairs has finally gone quiet. In its place is something heavier, a low readiness hum running through every wall of Hollow Spire, the sound of a hidden world deciding, all at once, that hiding is no longer the plan. Priya is waiting for me at the top of the stairwell when I climb back up, arms crossed, already wearing the expression of someone who has heard the broad strokes of the plan and hated every part of it. They're sending you up, she says. It isn't a question. I volunteered. That's worse. She falls into step beside me as I head toward the equipment lockers, her boots hitting the floor harder than they need to. You know what's up there, Reyna. Patrol drones don't sleep. They don't get bored. They don't decide to take a break because the planet's supposedly empty. I know what's up there. Do you? Because the last person who told me they understood the surface risk is currently a name on a wall. I stop walking. She stops a step later, and for a second neither of us says anything, because we both know exactly whose name she almost said and decided not to. I'm not him, I say finally. I'm not climbing up there to finish a job nobody asked for. I'm climbing up there because somebody has to, and I know that tower better than anyone left breathing. Priya's jaw tightens, the anger in her face doing the work that worry doesn't want to do out loud. Fine, she says. Fine. Then you're not going up there with nothing. Let's get you geared. The locker room is small and smells like rubber and old metal. Priya pulls a pack down from a shelf I didn't know existed, checks it without asking, restocks 2 things that were missing, and hands it over like she's been doing this her whole life instead of 6 years. Stealth plating on the jacket, she says, tapping the lining. Won't stop a direct hit, but it'll dull your heat signature enough to matter. Climbing gear's in the side pouch. There's a signal flare in there too, for emergencies only, because the second you use it, every drone within range knows exactly where you are. So basically never. Basically never, she agrees. There's also this. She presses something small and cold into my palm. A photo, the corner worn soft from handling. A young man laughing at something just off camera, sun in his eyes. Where did you get this? Found it in a supply crate years ago. Never knew whose it was until I asked around. Somebody said it was your brother's. I kept it, in case you ever wanted it back. She shrugs, like the gesture costs her nothing, though I can tell it costs her plenty. Figured today's as good a day as any. I put it in my breast pocket without trusting myself to say anything about it. Down the corridor, the readiness hum gets louder, as more of the base comes online, lights flickering up section by section, like something waking from a long sleep. Somewhere behind a door I'm not cleared to see, technicians are running diagnostics on towers of blue light that have been waiting 12 years to matter. Somewhere closer, Caleb Whitfield is double-checking a route map with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and I still don't know why, and there isn't time left to wonder. 20 minutes, Priya says, checking the comm clock on the wall. That's how long it's been since the broadcast. Could be 20 more before something lands. Could be 2. Then I'd better climb fast. She grips my shoulder once, hard, the kind of grip that means more than any speech would. Come back down, she says. That's the whole plan. Climb up, do the job, come back down. Don't be a hero, we've buried enough of those. I think of Mateo's photo sitting against my chest, light as paper and heavy as anything I've ever carried. Copy that, I say, and head for the lift that will take me as close to daylight as anyone in this base has been in 6 years. The lift doors open onto a stairwell I have never climbed, and the air changes before I even take the first step. Colder, thinner, carrying a smell I haven't smelled in 6 years and didn't know I missed until it hit the back of my throat. Rain. Real rain, somewhere above me, soaking into broken concrete. I climb in the dark, headlamp off, counting steps the way Caleb's map told me to, because counting steps is easier than thinking about what's waiting at the top. 40 more. 30. The stairwell narrows, then opens into a maintenance hatch rusted nearly shut, and I have to put my whole shoulder into it before it gives with a groan loud enough to make my heart stop for a full second. Then I'm outside. The sky is the first thing that gets me. Gray, low, heavy with cloud, but it's sky. It's open. It doesn't end 6 inches above my head the way every ceiling I've known for 6 years does. I stand there longer than I should, just breathing it in, before training finally kicks my legs back into motion. The world around me is wrong, in a way that photographs never prepared me for. Buildings stand half-finished, not from construction but from destruction. Walls sheared off clean as if something had taken a great flat hand and swept through a city built by people who thought they had more time. Grass grows up through the cracked spine of a road that used to carry cars. Somewhere far off, a structure groans and settles, the sound of a building deciding, after 6 years, to finally fall down. I move low, sticking to the shadow line of broken walls. Exactly the way the map said to. Exactly the way I used to move when I'd sneak out here as a kid to bring Mateo lunch at the tower, because he always forgot to eat on long shifts. The tower itself comes into view 20 minutes later, and seeing it knocks something loose in my chest that I don't have time to examine. It's still standing, leaning, scarred along one whole side where something hit it hard enough to buckle the steel, but standing, the way Mateo always said it would, because he built half its reinforcements himself with his own 2 hands. I'm halfway across the open stretch toward its base when I hear the drone. Not see it, hear it first, a thin mechanical whine cutting through the rain, and every cell in my body goes still before my brain even finishes processing the sound. I drop low behind the husk of a burned-out vehicle, breath caught somewhere behind my teeth, and watch a Thresher patrol unit glide past 40 feet overhead, sleek and silver, scanning the ground below it in slow, methodical sweeps. It doesn't stop. It doesn't slow. I count to 60 after it's gone before I let myself breathe normally again. And even then, my hands are shaking when I finally reach the tower's base ladder. The climb up is worse than the climb down ever was. Rusted rungs. Wind that wasn't a factor underground and is now a constant shove against my back. Halfway up, my boot slips on a wet rung, and for 1 full second I am only holding on by 2 fingers, and whatever's left of my nerve, the drop below me very visible, very real, very far, all at once. I don't look down again after that. At the top, the relay dish sits exactly where Mateo's old maintenance logs said it would, scarred but intact. Its alignment housing cracked open from whatever hit the tower years ago. I pull tools from my pack with hands that have gone steady now, the way they always do once there's actual work in front of them instead of just fear. My earpiece crackles, Priya's voice, tight and clipped. "Reina, talk to me." At the dish, housing's cracked but the core looks intact. "Give me 10 minutes. "You don't have 10 minutes. A pause, the sound of something urgent happening somewhere far below me. "We've got a situation down here." My hands keep working even as my whole attention narrows down to her voice. "What kind of situation?" "Caleb." She says the name like it tastes bad. "He tried to pull the primary coupling on the array 2 minutes ago. Said something about his family. Said the Threshers have his sister. Said if we fire this they'll kill her for it. Okoye's got him contained but the coupling's damaged. We're working a bypass." I think of his shaking hands on that route map. I think of how he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Is the array still functional?" "Barely. We've got maybe 1 shot in us, not the full sequence we planned. 1 window, Reina, and it closes the second you get that relay aligned, because the second we fire, every hull up there knows exactly where to look." My fingers move faster now, stripping wire, reseating the cracked housing with a brace I wasn't sure would fit until it does. Every motion something my body seems to remember even though I've never done this exact job before. Mateo's job. His hands on this same dish, years ago, keeping a different signal alive for a different kind of hope. "Aligning now," I say, more to myself than to her. The dish groans as I force the housing back into its cradle, and somewhere deep inside it, something clicks. A sound so small I almost miss it under the wind, and then a thin green light blinks awake on the control panel beside my hand. "Signal's up," I say. "Tell Okoye she's got her uplink." The response that comes isn't Priya's voice. It's Okoye's, rougher, breathless, like she ran somewhere to grab the comm herself. "Confirmed receiving," she says. "Reina, get clear of that tower, now. However far you can manage in the next 90 seconds, go." I don't ask questions. I'm already moving, half climbing, half sliding down the ladder, rungs blurring past my hands faster than is probably safe, landing hard at the bottom and immediately running for the cover of a collapsed wall 30 meters off, because something in Okoye's voice told me 90 seconds was not a generous number. I make it behind the wall with maybe 20 seconds left, dropping flat against broken concrete, and then the sky changes. It doesn't happen with sound first, it happens with light, a series of pale streaks tearing upward through the cloud cover. Fast, faster than anything I've ever seen move, climbing toward orbit like the planet itself had finally decided to throw something back. I count them without meaning to. 6, 10, more than I can track, all of them rising out of the debris fields that have circled this dead planet since the day it stopped being whole. Every burned-out satellite and broken hull fragment given purpose and direction and weight, all in one breath. Then the sound arrives, rolling across the ruined city like something physical. A deep tearing roar that I feel in my chest before I hear it in my ears, and I press myself flatter against the wall as the ground itself seems to shiver underneath me. High above, where cloud cover thins enough to show a sliver of open sky, something blooms. Bright, then brighter, a flash that turns the gray afternoon white for half a second, and I know without being told that somewhere up there, in orbit, one of the ships that broadcast our extinction 20 minutes ago has just stopped existing. A second flash follows it, then a third. I don't cheer. I don't have the breath for it. I just lie there against the cold, wet concrete with my brother's photo against my chest and watch a sky I haven't seen in 6 years light up with the sound of a species refusing to stay buried. The relay dish above me crackles once more, Okoye's voice cutting through, raw with something I've never heard from her before, something close to joy. Direct hits confirmed, she says. 3 hulls down, 2 more scattering out of range. Reyna, that signal you fixed, just put us back on the map. Define back on the map, I say, still flat against the wall, still watching fire bloom against gray cloud. I mean, everyone who's still up there now knows exactly where we are, she says, and the joy in her voice thins out fast, replaced by something harder. Get underground. Whatever's left up there is going to come looking, and it's not going to be polite about it. I push myself up off the concrete, legs unsteady, ears still ringing faintly from a roar that's already fading into echo. The rain has started again, fine and cold against my face, washing soot down from a sky still glowing faintly orange at its edges. I start running for the hatch I came up through, because Okoye's voice has the particular flatness of someone who has already done the math on how much time we don't have, and I have learned, the hard way, exactly what that flatness usually means. Behind me, the tower stands scarred and proud against a sky finally doing something other than raining ash, and somewhere far above the clouds, the remains of a fleet that called us extinct are scattering in every direction, trying to figure out how a dead planet just bit back. I don't get far before the ground decides to remind me that celebration is a luxury I haven't earned yet. A shape drops out of the low cloud cover maybe 200 meters ahead, not the slim silver patrol drone I dodged on the way in, but something larger, blockier, hovering low enough that its downwash kicks loose grit and ash up off the broken road in a stinging cloud. A retrieval unit, the kind built to land, to search, to carry something heavy back up with it. I drop behind the nearest cover, a slab of collapsed wall barely tall enough to hide my shoulders, and watch through a gap in the concrete as the unit settles onto what used to be an intersection, 200 meters of open, broken ground, standing between it and the hatch I need to reach.
Reyna.
Priya's voice, tight in my ear. We've got a ground unit on sensors near your position. Tell me you see it. I see it, I whisper, like whispering matters to a machine that can't hear me through rock and rain anyway, except whispering is what my body does when it's trying to disappear. It's sitting right on top of my route back. Find another way. There isn't another way, Priya. This is the route. I press my back against the slab, mind already working through what's left of the map Caleb drew with shaking hands. Every alternate path either longer than I have time for or running closer to the unit than I'd like. I'm going to have to go around it. Wide. How wide is wide? Wide enough that I find out the answer the same time you do. I move low and slow along the broken wall line, every step placed with the kind of care I haven't had to use since childhood games of not stepping on cracks. Except now the stakes involve a machine that could end this whole detour permanently. The unit's sensors sweep in a slow rotating arc, a thin red light scanning rubble and ash with patient mechanical attention, and I time my movement to the gaps between sweeps. 3 steps, freeze, 3 steps, freeze, my heart hammering louder in my own ears than the rain falling around me. Halfway around the wide arc I've chosen, my foot catches a loose piece of broken pipe hidden under ash, and it rolls, clattering against stone with a sound that feels enormous in the stillness. The retrieval unit's sensor sweep stops. I freeze completely, every muscle locked, watching that thin red light hold steady, pointed almost directly at the rubble pile I'm crouched behind, close enough now that I can hear the low whine of its internal systems shifting, recalculating, deciding whether the sound it just registered is worth investigating. I don't breathe. I'm not sure my heart is beating either, or if it's just stopped politely waiting to find out whether it needs to. The light sweeps on. I let the breath out slow, through my teeth, and keep moving the second the unit's attention shifts fully away, faster now, less careful. Because careful only works until you've already been caught once and gotten lucky, and luck is not something I trust to repeat itself twice in one afternoon. The hatch comes into view through curtains of gray rain, half buried in rubble exactly where I left it, and I cover the last stretch of open ground at a dead run, lungs burning, legs aching from a climb and a chase they were not built for anymore. After 6 years of tunnel corridors and stairwells. Behind me, the retrieval unit's whine rises in pitch, and I don't look back to find out if that means it's seen me, or if it's simply finishing its sweep, because looking back costs time I don't have. I half fall, half dive through the hatch opening, slamming the rusted door shut behind me with both hands, and the last of my strength, the sound of it echoing down the stairwell ahead of me like a gunshot. I sit there in the dark for 3 full seconds, back against cold metal, chest heaving, before my legs remember how to carry me down toward the lift. I'm clear, I say into the comm, voice cracking around the edges. I'm in the hatch, heading down. Copy that. Priya's relief comes through even in 2 words. Get to the lift. We need eyes on the next wave before it decides what it wants to do about us. I take the stairs 2 at a time on legs that have nothing left to give, and somehow find the strength anyway, because stopping now, this close, feels like the kind of mistake that doesn't get a second chance. Behind me, somewhere above ground, the rain keeps falling on a tower that just helped a planet remember how to fight back, and ahead of me, somewhere below ground, a base that called itself extinct 20 minutes ago is already bracing for whatever decides to answer. The lift doors open onto chaos dressed up as discipline. Every screen in the command deck is lit, every voice talking over every other voice, and somewhere underneath all of it, Leo is laughing, actually laughing. The kind of laugh that comes out when a body doesn't know what else to do with everything it's feeling. You're alive, he says, grabbing my arm the second I step off the lift, checking me over like he doesn't quite believe what his eyes are telling him. You're actually alive. Define alive, I say, and my voice still has gravel in it from the run. Ask me again once I've stopped shaking. He doesn't laugh at that one. He just pulls me toward my station, where Priya is already waiting, jaw tight, eyes locked on a feed that's pulling in fragments of intercepted thresher chatter, garbled and fast, our translation engine struggling to keep pace with whatever's being said up there. We're getting pieces, Priya says, not looking away from the screen. It's not clean, but it's enough to get the shape of it. I drop into my chair, and the words start scrolling across my display in broken bursts, half-finished sentences, stitched together by a machine, doing its best with a language built for a species that has never needed to sound panicked before. Unknown origin. Unknown capability. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Designation reassessment required. Survey error. Survey error. Survey error. That last line repeats 4 times before the chatter shifts to something else, a different voice entering the stream. Colder, slower, carrying an authority the others don't have. That's new, Leo says, leaning over my shoulder. Different signature, stronger transmitter. Command vessel, Priya says. Has to be. Something just told the scattering ships to stop scattering. The new voice's words come through in pieces, and even broken, even filtered through a translation engine guessing at half of it. The meaning lands clear enough to make the whole room go quiet around me. Hold position. Confirm origin coordinates. This is not extinction. This is provocation. Provocation requires response. They're not running, I say, the words coming out flatter than I want them to. They're regrouping. Okoye's voice cuts through the comm a second later. No preamble. No easing into it. All stations. I need eyes on orbital tracking right now. If there's a command vessel up there reassessing us, I want to know exactly what it's doing next. It takes Leo less than a minute to pull the feed together, and when the image resolves on the main screen, my stomach drops somewhere it hasn't been since the day I heard Mateo's name on a casualty list. A single hull, larger than anything we caught on the earlier broadcast, breaks away from the scattering fleet and begins a slow, deliberate descent, angling itself toward the upper atmosphere instead of away from it, instead of doing the thing every smaller ship around it is doing. That's not retreat, Priya says quietly. No, Okoye agrees, her voice coming through flat and certain. That's a ship coming to confirm a kill in person. The command vessel's trajectory data scrolls across my screen, and I don't need Leo to run the math out loud to understand what I'm looking at. It's not aiming for the planet in general. It's aiming for a point. A specific point, our point. They trace the relay signal, I say. They know exactly where the shot came from. They know roughly, Okoye corrects. But the correction doesn't carry much comfort in it. Roughly is going to be close enough. The base around me changes in the space of a single breath, the readiness hum from earlier, sharpening into something with an edge. Doors sealing along corridors I can hear even from here. Voices rising and falling in the clipped rhythm of people moving toward emergency stations they trained for but never expected to use for real. Time to impact, Okoye says. Leo's hands fly across his board, numbers updating fast, his face losing color with every recalculation. 6 minutes, maybe less if it doesn't slow for atmospheric entry. 6 minutes to move every soul in Hollow Spire deeper than a single command vessel strike could reach, and some of those souls are in sections that take longer than 6 minutes just to walk through on a normal day. All non-essential personnel to the lower shelter levels. Okoye's voice rings out over the base-wide comm, steady even now, especially now. The kind of steady that I understand costs her everything to hold on to. This is not a drill. Move with purpose, not panic. We have time if we use it well. Leo grabs his gear off the console, hands shaking just slightly despite the comm he's trying to wear like armor. I've got people on level 4 who don't know yet, he says. I'm going to get them moving. Leo, I know the fastest route, he says, already half out of his chair. Faster than the emergency broadcast alone is going to manage. I'll catch up. Priya's hand closes around his arm, gripping hard enough to make him stop for half a second. You catch up, she says, every word deliberate. That's not a suggestion. Wouldn't dream of disappointing you, he says, and there's that crack in his voice again. The one that shows up when something rattles him all the way down. Except this time he's smiling through it, and he's already moving before either of us can say anything else. I watch him disappear down the corridor toward level 4, toward the people who haven't heard the broadcast yet, and something in my chest tightens in a way I don't have time to name. Reyna. Priya's voice pulls me back. We need to move too. Lower shelter, now. The corridors blur past as we run, lights flickering as the base reroutes power toward the shelter doors, voices calling out section numbers and head counts. The whole hidden world I've lived inside for 6 years folding itself smaller and smaller, deeper and deeper, the way it always does when the sky decides to remember we exist. We're 40 meters from the lower shelter door when the ground stops behaving like ground. It happens all at once, a deep concussive shudder that knocks me sideways into the corridor wall, dust and loose rock raining down from the ceiling, every light along the hallway flickering once, twice, then dying entirely, plunging us into a darkness broken only by the dim red glow of emergency strips along the floor. Impact, Priya gasps, pulling herself upright, one hand braced against the wall. That's impact, that's not us. Get up, get up. The shudder comes again, smaller this time, an aftershock rolling through layers of rock I never fully appreciated until this exact moment, every one of them between us and a sky, currently being struck hard enough to shake a buried world. We reach the shelter door half-deafened, ears ringing, and Priya hauls it open just enough for both of us to scramble through before slamming it shut behind us, sealing us into a room already crowded with faces I recognize and faces I don't, all of them turned toward the door, all of them counting heads the way I am, the way everyone down here has learned to do without ever being taught. I count 3 times before I let myself accept what the third count confirms. Leo isn't in the room. He went for level 4, I say, voice barely above a whisper, the words feeling too large for the small space they're trying to fit into. He said he'd catch up. Priya doesn't answer right away. She's staring at the sealed door, jaw working, hands curled into fists at her sides. And I understand, in the silence that stretches out between us, that she's doing the same math I am, the math neither of us wants to finish. The base shudders one more time, fainter now, the impact above us settling into something more like aftermath than attack, dust still drifting down from cracks in the ceiling that weren't there an hour ago. Comms, Priya says finally, voice rough. Somebody get me a line to level 4. The room goes quiet, except for the static crackle of someone working the relay, every face turned toward a small speaker that isn't saying anything yet, all of us holding the same breath, waiting to find out what the sky took from us this time, and what, if anything, it left behind. The speaker crackles again, and a voice comes through it, thin and broken by static, but a voice, a living voice, and the relief that moves through the room is almost physical. A held breath finally let go all at once. This is level 4 shelter. We have partial collapse on the east corridor. Repeat, partial collapse east corridor. We have 22 confirmed inside the shelter, still accounting for stragglers caught in the hallway during transit. Names, Priya says into the relay, her voice tight enough to cut glass. I need names of who's still unaccounted for. A pause. Too long a pause. The kind that tells you the answer before the answer arrives. Working on it. The corridor's unstable. We can't send anyone back out until structural confirms it's safe. Some of us heard someone behind the collapse point, still hard to say who. The comm relay in that section took damage during impact. I don't realize I've moved until Priya's hand lands on my arm, not stopping me exactly, just steadying me, the way you'd steady someone walking too close to a ledge they haven't noticed yet. He went back for stragglers, I say, and I'm not sure if I'm telling her or telling myself. That's what he does. That's exactly what he does. I know, she says, and her voice has gone somewhere quiet and careful, the place it goes right before she says something hard. We don't know anything yet, Reyna. Don't build a story before the facts catch up to it. But I already feel the anger climbing up through my chest, familiar and almost welcome, the way it always is. A tool I know exactly how to use because I've used it so many times before. Anger is easier to hold than the alternative. Anger doesn't make my hands shake the way fear does. Anger gives me somewhere to put all this energy that has nowhere else to go in a sealed room 40 meters from a corridor full of broken rock. Then let's get the facts, I say, and my voice comes out harder than I mean it to, though not by much. How long until structural clears that corridor? Unknown, the voice on the relay answers. Could be 20 minutes. Could be longer if the upper levels took more damage than we can see from here. 20 minutes feels like both nothing and everything at once. 20 minutes ago, I was lying flat against a concrete wall watching the sky burn with proof that we are not, in fact, extinct. Now I'm standing in a sealed room counting down a different 20 minutes, wondering if that proof cost us something I'm not ready to lose. Okoye's voice comes through the base-wide comm a moment later, calmer than I expect, though I'm starting to understand that her comm is its own kind of armor, built the same way mine is, just wearing different clothes. All shelters, hold position, she says. The command vessel strike has passed. Orbital tracking shows it pulling back to high altitude, reassessing. We are not in the clear, but we are not under immediate fire. Structural teams, begin damage assessment the moment tremors fully settle. I want every corridor checked, every person accounted for. No one gets left behind a wall we can clear. The room around me shifts at that, attention easing just slightly, replaced by the quieter, harder tension of waiting. I sit down on the nearest bench because my legs have decided they're done holding me up for the moment, and Priya sits beside me without a word, close enough that her shoulder presses against mine, which is the only comfort either of us seems able to offer right now. He'll be fine, she says eventually, though I notice she doesn't sound entirely convinced of it herself. He's stubborn. Stubborn people are hard to kill. You've met me, I say. You know that's not actually true. She almost laughs at that, a short broken sound that isn't quite a laugh, more like the ghost of one passing through on its way somewhere else. We sit there together in the red emergency light, listening to the structural teams call out progress over the comm in clipped, careful updates, every minute stretching longer than the one before it, while somewhere above us, a sky that just learned a hard lesson about underestimating buried things, settles back into an uneasy, watching quiet. It's 19 minutes before the relay crackles again, and this time the voice on the other end isn't the calm, careful tone from before. It's breathless, fast, almost tripping over itself to get the words out. We've got him. We've got Leo. He's alive. He's banged up bad. Looks like a support beam caught his leg. But he's alive. He's talking. He's actually complaining about the dust in his hair. That's how alive he is. The sound that comes out of me isn't quite a laugh and isn't quite a sob, some strange cousin of both, and I press the heel of my hand against my eyes, before anyone can see exactly how close I came to losing the careful hold I've kept on myself since the first siren went off. Priya doesn't bother hiding hers. She just puts her face in her hands for a second, shoulders shaking once, twice, before she straightens back up like nothing happened at all. Get him to medical, she says into the relay, voice only slightly unsteady. And somebody tell that idiot that if he ever pulls a stunt like this again, I will personally finish the job the rubble started. A faint laugh crackles back through the static, and somewhere down a corridor full of dust and broken stone, I imagine Leo managing a grin even with a beam across his leg, because that's exactly the kind of stubborn he is, the kind Priya called hard to kill, and for once, she was right. We don't get long to sit in the relief. Okoye's voice comes through the base-wide comm less than 10 minutes later, and the moment I hear the shape of it, low, controlled, deliberately even, I know whatever she's about to say isn't going to let us rest yet. All stations, status update. The command vessel has not withdrawn. It has resumed a stationary high orbit directly above our last confirmed strike origin. A pause. And even through the comm I can hear her choosing her next words carefully. It is broadcasting, not weapons fire. A message. We're translating it now. Leo, apparently too stubborn to stay in medical even with a freshly splinted leg, is wheeled into the command deck 20 minutes later by an orderly who looks like she's given up arguing with him, and he waves off my first 3 attempts to ask how he's feeling with a flick of his hand and a look that says later, not now. Message is through, he says instead, voice rough but steady, pulling the translated text up on the main screen for everyone to see. Species Sol 3, survey error acknowledged, reassessment in progress. You have demonstrated capability inconsistent with extinction designation. State your terms or face full reclamation response. The room is silent long enough that I can hear the ventilation system cycling overhead. They're asking us what we want, Priya says slowly, like she doesn't quite believe the words even as she says them. Or they're giving us one chance to surrender before they stop asking nicely, Okoye says, stepping onto the command deck with a tablet under one arm, her face carrying the particular exhaustion of someone who hasn't slept and isn't going to anytime soon. Either way, we don't get to answer with words alone. Not to a species that just watched words fail to keep them away from our planet 6 years ago. The array, I say. The array, she confirms. Caleb's sabotage cost us the full sequence. We confirmed 3 kills and damaged 2 more on the first strike, but the system needs a full recharge cycle to fire at that scale again, and we don't have a full recharge cycle. We have maybe 40% capacity, redirected through what's left of the debris field still in range. Is 40% enough? Against 3 scattered scout hulls, maybe. Against a single command vessel built to survive a planetary bombardment campaign? She shakes her head slightly. Not on its own. We need a weak point. Something specific. Something we wouldn't know unless we'd been listening very closely to exactly the kind of ship that's currently sitting in our sky. Every head in the room turns toward me at the same moment, and I realize, with a small, cold drop in my stomach, that listening very closely is the one thing I have spent my entire life learning how to do. Give me the intercepted command chatter, I say, already pulling my headset back on, fingers finding my console like they never left it. All of it, from the moment that ship broke off from the scattering fleet. Leo wheels himself closer, despite the splint, despite Priya's glare, pulling up a secondary feed beside mine, so we can both dig through hours of garbled signal at once. The translation engine struggles with command-level Thresher dialect, formal and clipped and full of structures our system was never built to parse cleanly. But underneath the broken words, patterns start to surface the way they always do, if you listen long enough, patiently enough, the way I've trained myself to for 20 years, before the quiet even started. There. A repeated diagnostic ping, buried under the command vessel's general chatter, cycling every few minutes with a signature that doesn't match anything else in the transmission. Got something, I say, isolating the signal, running it back twice to be sure I'm not imagining a pattern that isn't there. It's a maintenance ping, internal. Sounds like a damage report being logged automatically. Low priority. Probably not meant for outside ears at all. Damage from what? Okoye asks, already leaning over my shoulder. From us, I say, and something in my chest goes very still and very focused, the way it did at the top of that tower with the dish cracked open in my hands. This ship took shrapnel during the first strike, not enough to stop it, but enough that it's been quietly logging a stress fracture along its dorsal shielding ever since. Aft quadrant. They haven't repaired it because they didn't expect to need to, because they came down here expecting an empty planet, not a fight. Okoye straightens up fast, already turning toward the comm. Targeting, you copy that coordinate set? Copy, comes the answer from somewhere down the corridor, voice tight with focus. Recalculating strike vector for aft dorsal approach. Give us 90 seconds. You won't get 90 seconds clean, I say, eyes still scanning the feed. They're still broadcasting that message, which means they're listening for a response. The second we go quiet on that channel and active on a targeting array instead, they'll know exactly what we're doing. Then we don't go quiet, Okoye says, and something sharp and decisive settles into her voice, the sound of a plan clicking into place. Leo, can you generate a hold response? Something generic, something that buys us time without committing us to anything? Already drafting it, he says, hands flying across his board despite the splint propped awkwardly beside his chair. Standard delay language. Plausible enough that it shouldn't trip anything on their end. The next 90 seconds stretch out longer than the climb up that tower, longer than the run back to the hatch, longer than anything I've sat through in 6 years of waiting in the dark for a signal that might matter. I watch the targeting countdown tick down on my secondary screen, listen to Leo's careful, measured response loop out over the comm channel, keeping the command vessel's attention exactly where we want it. And somewhere underneath my own ribs, that same old steadiness from the very first siren settles back in, heavier now, but familiar. 40 seconds in, a new voice cuts across the targeting channel, tight with something that isn't quite panic, but is close enough to it that my stomach drops in sympathy. Dara Quinn, one of the array technicians who helped Okoye build the towers in the first place, her words coming fast and clipped. We've got a power fluctuation on the redirect coupling. Same line Caleb damaged earlier. The bypass is holding, but it's holding rough. If this spikes again before we fire, we lose the lock and have to start the whole sequence over. How rough is rough? Okoye asks, already moving toward the lower corridor, like proximity alone might steady a coupling 3 levels down. Rough enough that I don't love our odds, Dara says. I can stabilize it manually, but I need someone holding the secondary feed steady while I do. Both hands, no room for anything else. I've got the feed, Leo says, not looking up from his board. Fingers already shifting to a configuration I recognize from a dozen drills we ran together, back when drills were the only kind of emergency we ever expected to face. Go. Copy. Stabilizing now. The countdown on my screen stutters, hangs for one long breath on the same number, and I find myself gripping the edge of my console hard enough that my knuckles go pale. Watching that single frozen digit like staring at it harder might force it to move. Come on, I say, quiet, mostly to myself, though Priya beside me makes a small sound of agreement that tells me she's holding the exact same breath I am. The number ticks forward again. Coupling stable, Dara reports, and the relief in her voice is so plain it almost hurts to hear. Redirect holding clean, sequence resuming. Targeting locked, the voice from down the corridor reports. Firing in 5, 4. I think of Mateo's photo, still tucked against my chest where I put it before the climb. 3, 2. I think of Leo grinning through a layer of dust, alive against every reasonable expectation. 1. Firing. The ground doesn't shake this time, not the way it did during the strike against us. This time the tremor that rolls through Hollow Spire feels different, lighter somehow, almost like relief given a physical shape. And on the main screen, orbital tracking shows a thin trail of debris field fragments arcing up and out, threading through the gap in the command vessel's coverage exactly where the stress fracture in its shielding has been quietly waiting to fail. The impact, when it comes, doesn't destroy the ship outright. I watch the feed closely enough to see that much, the hull buckling along its aft section in a spray of debris and venting atmosphere, systems flickering across half its visible length, but it holds together, wounded and staggering, instead of breaking apart entirely. It is, I think, more than enough. The command vessel's message channel goes silent for almost a full minute, the longest minute of the entire engagement, before a new transmission comes through, shorter than the last, stripped of any formal phrasing at all. Reassessment complete. Sol 3 designation updated. Hostile capability confirmed. Withdrawing for full fleet consultation. The ship pulls away from its stationary orbit, slow and visibly damaged, trailing a thin stream of vented gas behind it, like a wound that hasn't finished bleeding, climbing back up toward the rest of its scattered fleet, instead of pressing the fight any further. Nobody in the command deck moves for a long moment, all of us watching that retreating signature crawl across the screen, half afraid that watching too closely might somehow undo it. They're leaving, Leo says finally, voice barely above a whisper. They're leaving, Okoye confirms, and for the first time since I climbed down to that lower level and saw the array's blue light pulsing in the dark, her voice carries something unguarded in it, something close to wonder. I sit back in my chair, the headset still warm against my ears, the broadcast that started this entire day still looping somewhere in the back of my memory, even though the channel itself has long since gone quiet. Status? Extinct, it said. 20 minutes, that turned into hours, that turned into a day I don't think any of us will ever fully stop carrying. It was wrong then, it's wrong now, and somewhere out past the edge of our sky, an entire fleet is currently learning exactly how wrong, one damaged hull and one updated designation at a time. The days that follow move strangely, the way days always do after something enormous happens and the world insists on continuing anyway. Structural teams clear the rest of the Level 4 collapse and confirm no further losses beyond bruises and broken nerves. Leo's leg gets set properly, and he spends the better part of a week complaining loudly about being stuck in a medical bay instead of at his station, which everyone agrees is the clearest possible sign he's going to be fine. Caleb is questioned at length about his sister, about the threats made against her, about a fear that drove him to nearly cost us everything, and Okoye, to my surprise, chooses understanding over punishment, because as she puts it, a frightened man protecting someone he loves is not the same thing as an enemy, even when his fear nearly becomes one. Intercepted chatter over the following days paints a picture none of us expected to see so soon. The wider Thresher fleet network, the one that received our extinction broadcast with such cold certainty, now carries a different kind of message threading through it. Careful, almost wary. A designation update spreading from hull to hull. Sol 3, reassessed. Approach with extreme caution. Some translations render it closer to leave alone entirely. A phrase that Leo insists on printing out and pinning above his station the moment he's back on his feet, because, as he says, some sentences deserve to be looked at every single day. 8 days after the broadcast that started it all, Okoye authorizes the first full-surface excursion since the quiet began. Not a stealth mission, not a single volunteer climbing alone toward danger, but a real one. Lights and open air, and a small group of us standing at the base of the same hatch I crawled through alone just over a week ago. The sky above Hollow Spire is gray when we step out, low cloud cover hanging close to the broken skyline, but it isn't raining, and somewhere behind that gray, weak and pale, there's a suggestion of sun trying to push through for the first time in longer than I can remember. Priya stands beside me, arms crossed, looking up at that sky like she's trying to memorize it in case it changes its mind. Leo leans on a cane he insists he doesn't need, grinning at absolutely nothing in particular, the way he does when he's simply glad to still be capable of grinning at all. I find a flat stretch of broken concrete near the hatch, the kind of spot Mateo would have called a decent enough place to sit and eat lunch if you didn't mind the view, and I pull 2 mugs from the pack on my shoulder, An old habit I never quite let go of, even 6 years into a world that gave me every reason to. I pour coffee into both, lukewarm, recycled, nothing close to what coffee used to taste like before the quiet, and I set one mug down on the concrete beside me, in the space where someone used to sit. I don't explain the gesture to Priya when she raises an eyebrow at it. I don't think I need to. Somewhere above the thinning cloud cover, a sky that once decided we were finished is currently spreading word, ship to ship, fleet to fleet, that it was wrong. Somewhere below my feet, a hidden world that spent 6 years learning how to be quiet, is slowly, carefully, remembering how to be loud again. I sit there with 2 mugs of bad coffee and a sky I haven't trusted in years, and for the first time since the siren went off and my coffee jumped out of its cup, I let myself believe, all the way down, that we are going to be all right. Not because the danger is gone. I know better than that now. I know the universe is bigger and colder and far more crowded with things that might decide to test us again someday. But because for one quiet morning, sitting beside an empty mug that isn't quite empty at all, I finally understand what Matteo must have known standing at the top of that tower all those years ago. Some things are worth climbing for, even when the climb is the only certainty you have. The gray sky shifts overhead, and somewhere behind it, just for a moment, the sun finds its way through.